Donald Trump is losing it as Americans are demanding his impeachment. Get him out. It's not just Democrats. It's not just independents. Even former MAGA Republicans are saying you are acting like a dictator. You are behaving like a wannabe king. Get the hell out of there. And specifically, a lot of former MAGA people, or I guess they're still MAGA, but they're leaving right now, are livid that Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth have now retaliated against the AI company Anthropic for demanding that if their AI Claude language is used by the Department of Defense, that it cannot be used for mass surveillance or autonomous killing. The Trump regime is demanding that the AI Claude language be used for autonomous killing as well as mass surveillance, and they have now retaliated against Anthropic by calling it a supply chain risk, banning it from doing any business with the federal government. And they've now stated, and Pete Hegseth posted last night, that any company that has a Department of Defense contract, which Hegseth calls unlawfully the Department of War, that does business with Anthropic or has any commercial activity with Anthropic, that they will be banned from doing business with the government as well. So Amazon and Google and Microsoft and Nvidia, they all do business with Anthropic. So the Trump regime is now saying that all of those companies can't do business with the federal government. So I'm just trying to understand this. So it is okay for the United States to give its most highly classified semiconductor chips to the United Arab Emirates because they give Donald Trump's crypto company, World Liberty Financial, billions and billions of dollars that Donald Trump personally pockets huge sums of money. It's okay for Nvidia to give its semiconductor chips to China. That doesn't pose a supply chain risk if Nvidia sells its chips to China. But if Nvidia uses the Claude system or the Claude AI, or if Microsoft uses Claude, or if Amazon uses it, then all of a sudden that presents the supply chain risk. So now the Trump regime is attacking an American AI company. How could any company do business in the United States under those circumstances? And you can see why bank stocks are suffering and lots of tech stocks are suffering. Take a look at this Wall Street Journal article from yesterday. Bank stocks suffer another plunge on credit and AI fears. Consumer lenders more vulnerable during economic recessions were among Friday's worst performers, including American Express. You came in with a relatively optimistic outlook for the year. And now investors are running into risk factors that weren't necessarily at the top of their lists. What some of these bankers are saying, the risk factor that should be on the top of your list is Donald Trump, because the guy wakes up and then he starts having psychotic meltdowns, and then he starts posting things about this tariff and that tariff, and here's what I'm going to do. And that has real world impact on the United States, which is why we've been alienated in trade relationships by most countries throughout the world. And it's why we see America suffering right now. And we saw yesterday morning that the PPI, the producer price index, again, that usually translates to the consumer price index being raised and consumer-related inflation being raised. If the producer is paying more, came in way hotter than expected, 60 basis points higher than expected when it comes to core PPI. Core PPI unexpectedly rose 3.6% above expectations of 3%, which would have been high. And January's PPI, not the core PPI, it's PPI, came in at 2.9% above the expectations of 2.6%. In other words, how the hell is the Fed ever going to cut interest rates when this is the case? They can't cut interest rates. That's why there was another terrible day on the market yesterday. And while all of this is taking place, Donald Trump is threatening war with Cuba. And now we learned additional information that it appears, whether it was CIA backed or someone in the Trump regime backing some of these individuals who purportedly are from the Cuban diaspora, who were in South Florida, who got on those boats to go to Cuba and started opening fire on the Cuban Coast Guards. And then 4 of these individuals were killed on these United States fishing boats or speedboats. 6 people were captured. And the Cuban embassy just put out a statement kind of detailing who these individuals were and how they were living in the United States. And that's at the same time Donald Trump is talking about friendly regime change in Cuba, regime change in Iran. There's a war right now between Pakistan and Afghanistan, and Donald Trump saying that he's a big supporter of Pakistan because they said that he should get a Nobel Peace Prize. There's a hot war going on right there. I mean, what in the world is happening? And, yesterday you had the deposition of former President Bill Clinton, who sat there in New York with the House Oversight Committee asking him all these questions about Epstein, and he answered every question. No, didn't invoke the Fifth, unlike Donald Trump, who invoked the Fifth during a deposition that he took in connection with some of the New York cases that were against him. Remember, he invoked the Fifth in some of those cases. And what former President Clinton said during the deposition, I think, was actually potentially a smoking gun against Donald Trump. And I think Trump was really afraid about this. Former President Clinton said, look, Donald Trump told me that he had gotten along with Epstein and that they ended up having a falling out over a real estate transaction that they did together, and that it was nothing about girls, it was nothing about anything like that, or sex trafficking, that they were friends, and then they had a fight over a real estate transaction. By the way, as you know, what have we been saying on the Midas Touch Network? Not for the past year. If you've been watching this network, we've been talking about that real estate transaction that I said was at the heart of the Trump-Epstein disputes. I've been talking about that